All right, here we go. I'm just going to use a microphone this time. I'll throw in some videos I've made over the years. I haven't a clue what I'm going to put for you guys to watch while I'm doing this right now. It'll be random. But anyway, just working on my barn non-stop so I can hurry up and go get my horse trailer and the rest of my hay and other stuff. I'm watching the horses out the window right now. Absolutely frickin' pissing out. Raining. I think it's a 2,500 liter plastic tank out there that came with this place, and I propped it up on a stand behind the barn, and I moved one of the downpipes over the top of it, and if the thing isn't almost half full since yesterday, and that downpipe is coming from one half of the shop roof, which I think is about 20 feet by, I don't know, 70 feet of roof draining. But anyway, here we go. I'm going to get some more voices shared today. And we'll see what kind of a difference this makes if I just throw down some B-roll and this audio. But I have a feeling the YouTube load, I don't know what's going on with YouTube. What I normally do is I load these videos the night before and they're programmed to launch at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's how they go down. And they've never had a problem. But when I do these edits and then go to loading onto YouTube right away, YouTube delivers them to you guys before YouTube's ready to actually share the fully rendered video. So anyway, let's listen to this one. This is titled Sasquatch Stories. I had a good story for you, but wasn't sure if this is the place to send the stories. Hey Steve, love the videos. The only complaint I have is they aren't long enough. LOL. Anyways, I'll get right to it here. My name is Thomas. I'm in Osage. Man, who knows how to pronounce this one? Osage, Osage, O-S-A-G-E, and live in Oklahoma. Lived here all my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the Osage. I'm going to call it Osage County, where my family owned hundreds of acres of heavily wooded land not far from the Gray Horse Indian Reservation. When I was little, my grandmother and other family members always told stories about the wild men that lived in the woods and stories of my great-grandfather having some encounters with them while he was hunting. I've always thought it was just a bunch of nonsense to keep me from running around in the woods by myself and never really took it all that serious. When I got older in my teens, I started going out into the woods on my own. I loved the feeling of independence and freedom and being out there by myself. Oh, the memories. So then this encounter happens in early November 92, and it was never the same after that. I was 17 at the time, and I always had my trusty Winchester 1300 XTR 12 gauge, my fishing pole and tackle box with me. I'll go down to one of my favorite ponds about 3/4 of a mile away from the house, and would usually stay out there till about an hour before sundown. If the fish weren't biting, I would shoot the red-eared slider turtles in the pond because they kill all the fish and basically destroy everything you don't keep them in check. Basically destroy everything if you don't keep them in check. That's the dog drinking water in the background, if you're hearing something weird. But this day the fish were biting and there was no shooting. About an hour or so after sundown, I started hearing what sounded like a buck snorting in the woods on the east side of the pond. It sounded maybe 150 feet or so away from where I was standing on the north side of the pond. This went on for a while, but I didn't really pay all that much attention to it. It wasn't really anything I hadn't heard before. So I got my stuff together and started heading back to the house. I got about a 1/4 mile or so from the pond. I started hearing the snorting again, but this time it's about 50 feet from me in a line of black oak trees to my south as I walked east. The place I was walking through was a natural clearing in the woods. I could hear sandstone rocks getting kicked around and branches rustling. At first I thought it was some IGMO, ignorant moron, goofing around, but no one lives back there for miles. So after walking some more and continuing to hear all the racket this thing was making, I stopped and turned and looked. At this time, the sun was below the tree line and it was dark inside the trees. So if someone was in there, I wouldn't be able to see them, but I could damn sure hear whatever it was. It was heavy and wanted me to know it was there. I stood there and scanned for movement. Nothing. So I take off walking again, but this time I'm paying real close attention to the sounds it's making. When I would move, it would move. When I stopped, it stopped. There was a ton of sandstone there where that thing was walking, and I didn't hear hooves. That's when I got spooked when I realized it wasn't a deer. This thing followed me inside the tree line and stayed about 50 feet away to my 4 o'clock position for another 500 feet or so. So I reached the point where I would turn north. There was an old horse trail that went through a patch of sumac bushes that I would walk on to get to the fence on the north side of them. I'm 6'7", so they came up to about my chest in height. Right before I changed direction, I stopped again and turned and watched for a while. Again, nothing but silence. I take off walking into the sumac. The patch is roughly 70 or 80 square feet in size. I get about halfway through there and heard big, heavy running feet pounding the ground and deep, rapid breathing coming up behind me from that tree line. I immediately stopped and dropped everything except for my shotgun, clipped off the safety and spun around and squatted so I could see what was coming at me from under the sumac bushes. I was fully prepared, expecting to shoot something, but the weird thing is, the moment I stopped and crouched down, the noise came to a dead stop. There was no sound, no breathing, no nothing. Just dead, creepy silence. From the tree line to the sumacs was about 50 to 60 feet, and now it was in the bushes with me. From the time I heard the running noise and had stopped and dropped, it had got there that fast. I have 20/10 vision, and I could see clearly underneath the tops of those bushes. If anything would have moved, I would have shot it. I have no idea how, but this thing was camouflaged somehow, and I could feel it looking right at me, maybe 25 to 30 feet away. I wasn't scared, but I was definitely spooked. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what the hell I was dealing with here. So after about 30 seconds of this, I suddenly got a strong whiff of BO. We're talking about the kind of BO that's so bad it pisses you off. I never smelled anything like this until years later when I began a career in over-the-road trucking. Some truckers don't like to bathe for whatever reason. The first time I got a whiff of one of these guys, I was standing in line at a truck stop and was immediately reminded of that smell. Make no mistake, this isn't the type of BO caused by forgetting to put on deodorant. This is baked on, deep down, Grand Funk Railroad BO. So whatever this thing was, it was definitely a primate of some kind. So with that, I said, to hell with this shit, jumped up and left my damn fishing pole and tackle box where I had dropped them, and hauled ass as fast as I could run out of there towards the fence. I jumped over it, and my ass was walking backwards. I jumped over it, and I read it right, and my ass was walking backwards. At this point, I was moving back to the east on a little single-lane dirt road on the south side of my grandmother's property. The whole time I'm walking backwards, I'm expecting something to come running out of the bushes towards me at any second, but nothing. When I got about 50 feet away, the bushes started shaking, and I heard the damnedest noise I've ever heard. It sounded like a giant chimpanzee throwing a fit or something. So I stopped again, raised my shotgun, pumped off a round of double-eyed buckshot that hit the top of the bushes. I wasn't trying to hit it, I just wanted to scare it. After I shot, it stopped. At that point, I jumped over the fence on the other side of the road and picked up the pace a little and got to the back fence of the house, which was a quarter mile away. Right as I'm opening the gate, I hear this loud screaming from that direction that I can only describe as sounding like a cross between a giant man and an elk. It would start low and ended with a high-pitched scream like whoop. This continued for about 30 seconds and then silence. So that night was uneventful at the house, or so I thought, The next morning I wake up and head into the kitchen, and my grandmother tells me she had been out in the backyard all morning picking up trash. Something had got into the trash barrels at the southwest corner of the house and had made one hell of a mess. She said it was most likely dogs and told me to shoot them if I caught them doing it again. I didn't tell her about the Sasquatch encounter. So that night my grandmother takes off to her friend's house. I was all alone. The house is about 3 miles outside of town, nice and quiet. I laid down to get some sleep around 10:30 p.m. Right as I'm dozing off, I hear bottles and cans clanking around outside where the trash cans were. So I get up, grab the 12 gauge, loaded up some number 4 Nitro Express rounds. I didn't load the double-eyed buck because I didn't want to shoot the ricochet off the ground and blow holes in our propane tank or anything, as it was somewhat in line of fire. All the lights were off except for the big yard light outside that cast light through the windows on the south side of the house. I crossed the hallway, crept into the bedroom on the southwest corner of the house. I reached to the west window of the room. My plan was to crack the window open just enough to point the barrel out and blast whatever is out there digging in the trash. So I proceeded to crack open the window, fully expecting to see a coyote, raccoon, or some other kind of varmint. And that's when I experienced one of the biggest, oh shit, moments of my life. As I'm standing there, I realized I couldn't see out the window. I turned to my left and could see the yard light shining through the south side window, and turned back and realized something was blocking the light in the west window. I immediately started backing up towards the door of the room. That's when I could see the silhouette of this thing standing directly in front of the window. The top of that window was 8 feet off the ground, and its head was about 6 to 8 inches below the top of it. I couldn't see any details of its face, like color or eyes or anything, just the dark outline of its head and body, and there was no neck. I was frozen. Not in fear, but it's like when your computer gets a blue screen of death kind of thing. LOL. It was like my mind was trying to compute what I was seeing and just locked up solid is the best way I can describe it. I could have shot this thing, but I couldn't move. So after about 15 seconds of this, it just moved away from the window, and that was it. I kind of get the feeling it was letting me know it knew where I was kind of thing. I continued to go hunting and fishing out there for years after that, but never had any more encounters of that magnitude other than a few instances where something would follow me. Always about 50 feet away or so and always downwind. It sounded like my footprints were echoing and the occasional snorts and grunting noises. I just ignored it and figured if it wanted to kill me, it would have done it by then. Take care, Steve. All the best, Thomas. P.S. I went back to get my damn fishing pole and tackle box about a week later. The tackle box was gone, and the pole was snapped in half, and the reel was missing. I guess he showed me a thing or two. Next time I go there, maybe I'll leave him a stick of deodorant and some soap and a rope. Wow. Well, I'm surprised your grandmother hasn't had ongoing experiences or shared them with you. Imagine that, looking out the window and something's blocking the entire window. No, thank you. No thanks. Thanks for sending that in, man. Keep coming. You got any more experiences? You got something that'll, more importantly, if you got something that'll help the people, any kind of help, then get it to us, all right? Get it to us. Okay, what else we got? Keep going down the line. Here's another one. Mark this as red. Has a handful of pictures here. Some kind of structures, a footprint. I don't know what that is. We'll look at it on the computer in a bit. Well, my name. I live in the Magic Valley of southern Idaho. This is the desert area, but in my city of 50,000 people, there's the deepest gorge in America known as the Snake River Canyon. And the canyon breaks off into several smaller canyons that run through my town. Also, just outside of Twin Falls, we have the largest lava cave system in the world. Also, the first documentary film of the missing 411 was filmed not far from where I live. So, a pretty interesting area to say the least. So maybe we can keep my name confidential. Do that in the beginning, guys. Well, I have a really good friend who is a federal investigator, and we are both firm believers of these creatures. We all have heard of several accounts of people seeing these creatures in our canyon system. We decided to go down to the part of the canyon that is literally down the street from my house. We wanted to just explore the area and see if there are any signs of these creatures in the area. Well, something did happen that led to a series of events that are still going on to this day. We weren't planning on staying very long, so we didn't take flashlights. This was in November 2018. We drove from my house to the canyon and walked down the trail. We went to an area that is off limits. He said he would take care of it if someone said anything. He said he would take care of it if someone said anything, hence his occupation. We hiked for about an hour, and we did hear a large growl and stopped us in our tracks, and to us it sounded like a mountain lion. We backed up, and we noticed about 10 feet up a tree that the bark was just shredded, like a grizzly bear or something just tore it up. But we don't have grizzlies here in this part of Idaho. Here in the canyon, it gets dark very fast, faster than up on the surface. So before we knew it, it was dark. We had no flashlights, just the moonlight. My friend had a .41 caliber revolver on him. We started hearing twigs break and light movement around us. Whatever it was, it sounded like multiple large animals. As we were walking, I was straight up terrified and was sure whatever was out there was going to grab me off the trail. All of a sudden, I saw a huge black mass on the side of the trail ahead of us, and then it ran across the trail on two legs, and it was massive and blacker than the dark around it. I was praying that my eyes were playing tricks on me. Then my friend says it just crossed the trail in front of us. He confirmed what I thought I saw, and I lost it. I tried to run, but he assured me it'll be worse if I ran. So we backtracked and hightailed it out of the canyon, and it followed us the whole way, making noises and stuff. It wouldn't come out of the canopy of trees where it was pitch black. It didn't come into the moonlight. It just watched us and made noises. We drove to my house and we opened a bottle of whiskey. We're trying to get a hold of ourselves. Well, it doesn't end there. Personally, the scariest was still to come. About 1 to 2 weeks later, tops, my wife told me in the morning that something was on our roof in the nighttime hours. She said she heard a loud thump right above our room, above our bed. She heard it walking around up there, and she was struck with fear. She couldn't move or anything. She said it walked for a bit, and then it went quiet, and she fell back asleep. When she told me this, I decided to go outside and look for tracks since it was snowing. And sure enough, there were these prints on my roof, but they were barely visible since the snow covered them. But they were also on my neighbor's roof, and their neighbor as well, like it traveled on our rooftops to the canyon. I have the pictures. So I called my friend, and he came over. I said maybe it was that Bigfoot we saw, and it followed me home. He said he didn't think it was a Bigfoot, but maybe a dogman or a type of Bigfoot. I'd never heard of the term dogman or any other types of Bigfoot, so I started researching and freaked out when I heard all the stories about them traveling on rooftops. I always heard them called Wolfman or werewolf where I lived in Texas, and my family lived in Michigan as well, and talked about the Wolfman. Well, about another week or so after that, I was awoken around 3 to 4 in the morning by a thump. I listened, and I didn't hear anything else, so I went and checked the doors and checked on my kids. I couldn't figure out what woke me up, but something did for sure, and my little pup was acting strange. So I went out in the morning, and there were more tracks on the roof again. This time there was no snow covering them, and they went on our roofs towards the canyon again. I do have those pictures as well. I think something followed me home, and we have had several other weird things happen. My wife and 2 small kids seeing things that are alarming. It actually showed itself to my wife one evening and really scared her, and it even showed itself to my oldest, who was 8 years old. Both descriptions were a big black dog with pointy ears. My wife said it looked like a mix between a black German Shepherd and a Doberman Pinscher. My daughter had trouble explaining what it was. She thought it was a black bear because of the pointy ears and snout. Since then, we bought an alarm system and weapons, and of course, learning as much as I can on cryptids. There are several accounts of weird creatures being spotted here in my area. I have many more things to discuss that have happened recently, and I'd like to share my story with you and others. I don't know where to turn or who to tell. Thank God I had my friend here to help. We've gone on several other adventures, but approached on a very different level. I never knew that these things could follow you home and harass you, because that's what's been happening. We found a campsite down there destroyed with a shredded tent and empty bullet casings around the tent area. You can look up my church and school and find me to see I'm legit, and I don't think it will be good for me or my family, or my family if people knew about this, because people can be very closed-minded, unfortunately. This is my work email. All right, there's more about this. My friend not mind sharing the story. All right, tell you what, you want to share more? Okay, go ahead and share more. Whatever you got, you share it with me, all right? But make sure next time you don't have to start off, don't include your name in the story. You know, if you don't want me to share your personal details, don't put them in there. Okay, maybe save them for last, because I read the whole thing, and then now that I'm at the end of this, I'm going to read another email after this, and hopefully I'm not going to forget to go back and editing and knock out the part where explain your full name, your occupation, where you live, where you work, the whole 9 yards, right? But anyway, it's no secret that people get followed home once they go looking for these things intentionally. There's no secret. It's happened so many times, it's ridiculous. You know, they say, careful what you ask for, right? But be safe out there, and make sure you do send us more if you have more information that you think the people can benefit from hearing, okay? Be safe. Excuse me. All right, this is titled, Steve, I'm enjoying your here it is, take it or leave it attitude. Steve, I'm enjoying your here it is, take it or leave it attitude on the Sasquatch subject. It's really the only approach available, especially if the person you are talking to has had no contact with them and will in no way even consider what you're telling him is true. My background. I'm 68 years old, and MS has, for almost 30 years, finally disabled me. I'm 68 years old, and MS has, after almost 30 years, finally disabled me. And I'm sorry to hear that. So no fishing this year, and hunting is seriously in question, even with my disabled hunter status and the right to shoot from the truck. Let's face it, it's not really hunting anyway. Tough to accept, though, after 63 years of fishing and 58 years of hunting. I hunted and fished all over Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC, and those trips are what I live for, and the wild game in the freezer. I've had several encounters with Sasquatch over the years, including visuals, intimidations, stick structures, gifts, such as a cougar skull, and other strange experiences, which I won't go into right now. So here's my story. Use my name if you want. I really don't care. By the way, I've kept a record of my past hunting and fishing trips and always tried to add comment on any unusual encounters or experiences. It's amazing how many times a week I go back and review these records. Got lots of time to do that now. You know, I used to do the same. I got a whole bunch of stories written down, handwritten when I was in guide camp. I just found them the other day. It is great reading them. So enough BS. From my hunting records, the date was October 9th, 71. My dad and I were moose hunting in the Waparius Creek area of northwest of Calgary. Early one morning, we climbed the north end of a ridge we knew well, and then dropped partway down to the east side onto a bench, and then turned and began hunting to the south. After about 400 yards, we heard something crunching in the 7 or 8 inches of bone-dry yellow poplar leaves on the hillside below. We were still on the bench just below the top, and the crunching was directly below and coming straight up at us from the east. Reflecting back now, these were individual footsteps, with about a second and a half between each step. We both sat down about 25 feet apart with rifles ready. Whatever this was, it was coming uphill at a steady pace with only a couple of breaks of 9 to 10 seconds each. These were big, heavy steps, and only afterwards did I think about it and realized they sounded bipedal. When the noisemaker crested the rim of the bench at about 40 yards, I could see a tall, dark figure from about the knees up and lightly obscured by thin, leafless brush. The rising sun was breaking over Salter Ridge directly behind the animal, and there was some glare in my scope from the rising sun. It stopped at that point, and I was looking directly at us. My first impression was bull moose. The pale, buff-colored horn on the one side was bent down and forward, obscuring the face. I've shot a bull with this exact antler deformation and also obscured the facial area. In this case, I now believe this is actually the light tan-colored flat face of the animal. Anyways, as I studied the animal in my scope, I sensed there was something not quite right. I couldn't see the other antler, and it seemed to sense we were there. Afterwards, I wished I'd used my binoculars, but at 40 yards, I didn't think it would be necessary. I thought the scope would be all I needed. Anyway, after about 10 seconds of standing there, the animal spun 180 and tore off downhill, sounding like a runaway D8. My confusion was compounded further when I failed to see the long, dark body of a moose during the spin around. It seemed to be a tall, dark, vertical animal that turned as on an axis using 2 legs. Right afterwards, I made the mistake of saying to Dad, I think it was a bull. He did not see the animal, but berated me for not shooting, but there was no way I could have shot. One more thing, I don't believe the animal got our scent or actually saw or heard us. It seemed to stop, sense danger, and crash out of there. You had Both not moved or made any sound. I can add that the animal made no vocal, and there was no bad smell. There's one of YouTube broadcasts about how a moose standing on end in less than decent light can appear as tall, dark, two-legged animal. That prompted me to send this story to you. Basically, you're expecting to see the long horizontal body of a moose, not a slim vertical profile. Now, I suspect that they did this intentionally. Again, in this case, I did not see the horizontal body during the turnaround. At the time of the encounter, I heard of Bigfoot but knew nothing about them, so it didn't occur to me until years later this might have been what it was. I've also found other sightings reported for Waparius Creek on the Alberta Sasquatch website. Do what you want with this report, Steve. At least I got to tell it to someone who's willing to give me the benefit of the doubt and actually listen. Thanks, Steve, and stay with the program no matter what crap they sling at you. But I don't have to say that. I know you will anyway. All right, Jim. Thanks for that, man. Yeah, there is a lot of sightings around that area. You've probably dug up a whole bunch since you sent this. And I have a feeling I might have read this a long time ago. But there's thousands of new people here that probably haven't heard it. All right. What do we got here? Here's a short one. Mark this as read. Quarrymen witness and pursue trespassing human-looking being. Hi, Steve. I'm located in the northwest of the UK. Stockport is the town I was living in when the incident occurred. I was a loader at a sand quarry. This is the end of summer. Conditions were clear. So 5 of us were walking down the haul road, and I'm trailing a couple of strides behind when I switched my attention to my 5 o'clock position to see what I thought was a trespasser, stood literally on the edge of the bench no more than 100 meters away. I shouted, "Oi, you aren't allowed to be here." To this day, it disturbs me what it did. As I ran towards the figure, it slowly lowered out of sight as if it was in an elevator. I got to the point where I saw the figure, and in the grass was a wild fox curled up, and it was sound asleep, Steve. It only reacted to my presence when I turned to tell the other lads what was there. Now I know what I saw was not an epic fox. I can't explain it. We all saw it. Then, all left the quarry in a hurry. Thank you for your time. Yourself and David Politis are the only true warriors in this world. 100% respect to you both. Use my name by all means. Regards, Paul Moxon, UK. Paul, I haven't heard one like that before. That's definitely kind of different. If you've seen it, you've seen it. And we'll see if you sharing that knee-jerks somebody else from the UK to send in what they may have seen, which is similar, right? That would be something very frickin' bizarre to see. What a bizarre combo. Here's another one. Good morning, Steve. My name is Sean McLaughlin. I live outside a major metropolitan area of Oregon. I lived in the Northern California for many years as a mountain farmer, LOL. Although my story doesn't pertain to living in California, I never had an experience there, but heard many stories while living there. My story starts one morning when me and my 2 buddies got up before light and headed down to the Sandy River to do some steelhead fishing. This spot is well known in the area and is a popular swimming spot in the warmer months. It's called the Pipeline Hole, just below Dodge Park. We got there right at first light, and the sun was just cracking the sky. We started to fish. My 2 buddies started fishing directly under the pipeline bridge at the head of the hole, and I went down onto the tail out. After about 5 or 10 minutes, 2 other guys showed up and started fishing up by the bridge by my 2 friends. When all of a sudden, large rocks began flying through the woods on the other side of the river and landing in the river. Mind you, these rocks were the size of basketballs, and they were coming through the trees at about 30 to 40 feet up. The other side of the river is a 30 to 50 foot flat rock wall. I came up the river with a crass voice, and I asked my 2 buddies if they were throwing rocks in the goddamn river. Excuse me. They said no. They're coming from the woods on the other side of the river. When all of a sudden a few more came through the trees and landed in the river and made a large splash/plunking noise. Then the loudest, blood-curdling scream came from directly on the other side of the river. It started as a massive screech that I felt in my chest and ended in a large guttural man roar. This is all too typical for all the other encounters that I've heard you read. But me being towards the tail out of the hole, I can hear this thing a lot better than they could. I could hear him exhaling with every breath. It was as if he was huffing and puffing at the end of every growl and walking down the river. I lived in the woods for a long time, like I said, Steve, and I've heard lots of animals in the woods. I've killed wild boar, mountain lion, elk, deer, bear, and I've never heard them make any sound like I heard that morning. I looked upriver at my two buddies, and they were already up on the bank ready to go. Their eyes were the size of the bottoms of Coke cans. When I got to them, the first thing they said was, "What the hell was that?" I said, "I have no idea, but I've never heard anything like that." I looked up by the bridge, and two other fishermen were hightailing it up the bank as fast as they came to the fishing spot. My two buddies then said, "Let's get the hell out of here." I said, "No, let's stay." It sounded like it went downriver. I didn't feel threatened, but it was the gnarliest man roar I've ever heard in my life. I actually had one of my good buddies who was 6'8" tall and around 430 pounds try to replicate the man roar / screaming we heard. He used a large road cone like a moose call, but he wasn't even close. Later I saw an episode on the BFRO dipshits reporting on many other sightings in the same area. I think we just happened to run him off of his morning fishing spot, and he was pissed off and just letting us know. Well, that's all I have, Steve. I hope this helps some other people in the same area deal with what they saw or heard, or maybe the two other fishermen that were there that looked scared to death. Keep up the good work. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for giving me this platform to share my story. You can use my name. I don't give an F. Sean McLaughlin. P.S. Here's a few commas and a few periods, just in case I forgot any. Never said I was a scholar. Okay, man. Thanks for that. Man, I think I'm more pissed off that you had your morning steelhead fishing screwed up. It's usually a big effort to get into a spot these days. Well, you're right. Like you said, we'll see soon if somebody else... if somebody's had the same experience in that same place, right? And if maybe, who knows, maybe those other anglers are listening to this. And I just thought of this for the first time. I wonder how many people who have seen or heard something avoid the topic online. I'll bet you there's a bunch that do that too, right? They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to read about it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to remember it. I'll bet you there's a pile of people in that category. All right, here's a real short one titled Bigfoot Question. Good morning, Steve. I really enjoy watching your videos on YouTube. When I get the time to sit down and write it out to you, I will tell you about my two strange experiences I've had. I got a question for you. Has Les Stroud ever tried to get you to take him out in the woods to help him with his search for Bigfoot? Thanks, and be safe. No, the question is no. He hasn't. No, he hasn't. Would I? No. I'm sure I don't know him at all. But just so you guys know, I've dealt with a lot of people who were in the TV entertainment industry, and I have nothing in common with them. All right, so it won't happen. All right, moving along. Okay, what do we got here? Read one more. These horses are getting restless out there. I got to go feed, get them put away, and the goats. Blonde Bigfoots in Vermont is the title of this one. Hi, Steve. Sorry this is so long. There's just never enough words, I suppose. My name is Mackenzie. I'm sure you get more emails than any human could handle, but here I am anyway. After recently coming across your page, due to recommendation by a friend actually, he told me I should send you an email and see what happened. So here I am. I was born in southern Vermont. Yes, that's a state in the U.S. for those who don't know. Haha. I've traveled, but always have come back here to the place that is my home. The population of the county I live in is 15,000 or so, but it's very spread out. There are densely populated areas as well as miles and miles of untouched forests. It's beautiful here, while also kind of creepy at times. Local lore is about a place called Glastonbury, and honestly, you could get lost reading about it. Old miner town that was booming 100 years ago, but is now untouched. People talk about the Bennington Triangle, too. Plenty of people have gone missing, actually. None recently, though. So to my actual experience. It was 2:33 a.m., July 8th, 2013, also my birthday. I've always loved swimming. There's not an awful lot to do here other than be outside, so swimming was always an escape for me. Well, since it was my special day, my boyfriend at the time, Ben, said we could do whatever we wanted to do. Being teenagers going swimming in the middle of the night seemed reasonable. Boy, was I wrong. We decided to go to a place called Lake Perrin. It has a fishing side and a swimming side. The swimming side has a pavilion on the right and a snack bar on the left as you're going down the hill that the stairs are built into. We parked in the lot above the lake, maybe a 100-foot walk, but I swear as soon as the doors of our shitty-ass Ford Focus opened, it was like the air was just heavy. I think I'm just freaked out because it's dark, the middle of the night, and I've never liked pitch black very much, though there was some moonlight. Not enough to see your hand in front of your face. As we're walking, I'm in front. The closer we get to the lake, the stranger I feel. I have goosebumps just thinking about it. At the time, I didn't realize there wasn't a cricket or a cicada chirping. Just nothing. As we're walking down these stairs, we hear something to the right of us, pavilion side, almost like a rock tinging or something hitting a tree. We don't think much of it. I can't stress enough the dumb teenager fact and all. We're about halfway down the stairs. That feeling of dread everyone speaks of is just getting heavier and heavier. But I just think I'm naturally spooked. I have a plastic Adidas bag with towels and dry clothes in my right hand. I take off my flip-flops and my feet touch the sand. It's cold. As I dip my toes in the lake, I felt the strangest feeling. Pins and needles all over my body. As the water feels warm enough to be bath water. I glance back at Ben saying, "Let's get out of here." He agrees immediately. I slide my sandals back on and we start back up these stairs. I have this feeling that we're not alone and I'm half running up them. I trip. Ben pulls out his old iPhone. Finally, the flashlights used to take some work to turn on, and he shines it at our feet. As he does, we hear more noise, and I remember so clearly, like it was yesterday, looking at him and seeing pure terror wash over his face. We start moving again. As we're almost about to pass a snack bar, the strangest noise, the word I first used to describe it was a scuttle. Honestly, I didn't even know the true definition to the word. And he shines the light toward the direction of the noise. Maybe 6 to 8 feet to the right of us now, in front of the snack bar, but behind this metal bar that separates the pavement from the grass. I'm sure everyone knows how a deer curls up on the ground. Well, we watch this, whatever you decide to call it, start to stand from this curled, half-kneeling position on the ground. I watch its knees bend, and it come to a full upright stance. I'm 5'6", and although there were no breasts, it was nipple level. We were absolutely frozen in fear. I'm just staring at this massive, white/blonde, hairy thing. Far too big, far to be any human, unless they're on some pretty... far too big, I'm guessing, you meant, to be any human. Unless they're on some pretty crazy stilts, and no costumes could ever replicate this. I never looked for a face. Ben is close to a foot taller. He may have, but we never spoke much about it. All of a sudden, it let out the most blood-curdling scream. All of a sudden, I let out the most blood-curdling scream, one I didn't even know I possessed, and ran. I didn't know, didn't care, didn't think, I just ran. Ben doesn't run with me initially. I get to the car a full 5 seconds before him easily. It felt like hours. The driver's door handle was broken on this piece of shit car, and I got into the passenger. After those seconds passed, he starts smashing on the door with a force I couldn't even process, screaming to me, "Kens, open the effing door, Kens!" And looking back, I was in shock. It took me a second to be able to reach over and pull the handle. He drove out of that parking lot so fast, and we didn't speak of what we had seen until at least 10 minutes later. I don't remember who asked first, but "Did you see that?" came out, and I asked him if what he saw was white. He immediately agreed. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. Years later, we talked about it over a few beers, just stuff like, "That was crazy, right? That couldn't have been," but it sure was. I appreciate you bringing awareness to this sensitive topic. I was embarrassed to talk about it with someone who was with me, never mind the rest of my community. I've told the story some, but not too many. But I know what I saw that night was very, very real. Thanks so much, Steve. I hope it's a good one. Stay safe out there. All right. And welcome to the Club of No Return, Mackenzie. Right? So you probably heard by now, you probably read enough to realize that, yeah, there is a lot of, they cover all the same hair colors that your typical human being covers too, right? And in Vermont, there's no shortage of sightings out there at all. Tons, actually. More and more and more. It's freaking nonstop, you guys. All right, let's get one more out here. And then I'm going to jump into this outside into the monsoon and button up all the animals for the night. Polk County Sasquatch evidence. Hey Steve, my name is Mark Fan, F-A-N-N, and you can use my name if you want. I'd like to add my experiences that I consider to be Sasquatch evidence. Starting in the fall of '75 during deer season, my brother and I started noticing little teepee structures about knee-high on game trails. I thought it looked out of place, but thought maybe another hunter was using it as a marker of some sort. Fast forward to 2010, and I'm back hunting those same ridges that separate Holbert's Cove from Green River Cove, elevation around 2,000 feet, fairly rugged terrain with a lot of springs and small creeks, primarily hardwood dense canopy overhead. I hired a local contractor to open up a small tract of land, less than an acre, to serve as a food plot for the deer, and that's when things got weird. The next day after the excavation, we returned to fertilize and seed the area. An 8-inch thick tree now blocked the logging road that was open the day before. We reopened the road, but it felt like I was being watched. Later that year, during September, I went out of our cabin that was near our hunting area to get our bows out of the truck. There was a small group of does and yearlings in the back of the cabin eating grass. From up on the ridge, approximately 100 yards, came a guttural howl that ended with a chuff sound. Made every hair on my body stand on end. The deer behind the cabin blew out of there. Seconds later, the howl repeated, only way closer down the ridge to the cabin. The deer didn't return for 2 weeks. Later that year in November, I shot a doe with my bow and watched her go down and stay down. Not wanting to push her, I waited a good while. When I went back to where she had fallen, the animal was gone. No drag marks, no blood trail, nothing. We searched for hours until 2 a.m. I crawled through the dense laurels to the top of the ridge. Then I saw the eye shine. It was not from the doe, but of something very tall, and peeked intermittently from a tree about 50 feet away. The eyes were wide set and about 8 feet off the ground. I backed out the way I came. Later in December, sitting in the stand about 4:30 a.m. The stand overlooks the bottoms near the food plot we had planted. I hear what I thought were people slogging down the creek talking. As they got closer, I noticed their conversation was just gibberish. I was frozen in fear and didn't move till after daylight. Kind of takes the fun out of being in the woods. There's a pasture with a deer trail that comes down from that same ridge. The deer have to cross a drainage ditch that has 12-foot sycamore trees. Then I noticed the tree had been broken in half 5 feet from the top, right where the game trail cuts through. I have stands all over that ridge, and it is not uncommon to hear a tree fall while hunting. Thanks for hearing and revealing the truth. Okay, man, well, thank you for revealing the truth. Right, Mark? It's all of us together here doing the same thing, man. That would suck. That would suck having your animal taken after you put forward that huge effort to make that shot count, and then to go claim your your meat for your freezer and somebody just up and steals it from you. That would kind of suck, right? But anyway, all right, I gotta go. I am honestly beat again, once again, but whatever is what it is. And I'm starting to get, my mind is starting to focus on traveling for 2 days drive up northern BC. And I'm going to bring, I don't know, I'm probably going to bring enough salt blocks to make 4 different salt licks, around 60 pounds of salt each, spread over miles of remote country. And I'm going to drop probably 2 cameras per salt lick. And I'm going to as well make a few blinds and stands in various places for this upcoming fall. And it's that new area that I've been out exploring by myself the past couple of years. And I'm kind of excited to do it, but at the same time, like I always say, I start to freak myself out more when I'm at home, when I think about where I'm going to go, what I'm about to do. But when I start doing it, when I get there, then I'm cool hand Luke and I just get it done. But there is a pile of activity that goes on right where I'm going. And that's not too far from where we had the trail camera slid around the tree. It's not too far from where all the trees were broken around us. It's not too far from where the American veteran was camping up here with his dog in his van, and that huge thing that looked absolutely pissed off, the glowing eyes, banged the back of his van or lifted up off the ground or whatever. That's fairly close to where I'm going. So, you know, also Dave Plattis let me know that right where I am is where there's 2 different missing persons cases, I think, that he investigated there. So yeah, I start to think about it a lot now that it's getting close to me going up there and doing my thing. Funny, isn't it? But anyway, I haven't even checked my email today. I don't know if I have been reached out to from a handful of people that were hoping are going to deliver a whole bunch of new information for us shortly. I'm 100% confident they will come through. But anyway, that's it. More tomorrow. And the next day, and the next day. It's not going to stop till everyone's heard. Be safe.